Alexandra, thank you so much for joining this podcast episode. Really appreciate it. How are you today?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is mine, and I'm doing really, really well, and excited to do this podcast with you and talk about like I never talked about before in our podcast episode, which is narcissism, and
Mhm.
I think it's an unusual topic in the show. I'd love to know more about that, and also I'm gonna love to more about yourself, your journey into business world. So if you can start off from like where you got started from your business, choosing your idea of like why you wanted to be a coach, and then we can move forward.
Yeah, so my name's Alexandra Skinner Walsh. I am a licensed mental health counselor, and I started so I have two businesses. I have the Mad Therapy, which is a mental health group practice located in Bettendorf, Iowa. And I started that in 2020. I started the Mad Therapy, which is the whole practice in 2018 off by myself as a solo practice and grew it in 2020. I have my other business, the Mad Beyond, which is what I like to think of as like a mental health hub. So there's some e-courses on there as well as some merch and hopefully one day a podcast of my own.
All right, that's great. And how did you get into the business world? Like, when did you decide, like, I want to get into this kind of business? Because not many people
Yeah.
are coachable and they don't know, like, hey, am I good enough? Or self-doubt and so many things. A lot of people have got so much experience, even that they like have that self-doubt in themselves.
Mhm.
But you decided like you get into this trade. Like, how did you all got started? Like, what was your background before becoming a coach?
So I was a therapist before having my own practice. I was working at an agency, so another corporation essentially or nonprofit, and doing the same thing I'm doing in a way now, in terms of at least providing therapy services, not in terms of running my own business because I wasn't doing that at this time. But I was in the agency world, and while there was a lot of I learned a lot from that experience. I definitely looked around and thought I can do this better.
Mhm.
Um, I, on a very basic level, I would have clients come in and say, it's a little scary in here. And I would say, yeah, it is. This like wood panel, dark room, dreary. Sometimes we had heat, sometimes we didn't. Sometimes we had air, sometimes we didn't. And um, there are some therapists who are in these agency worlds and have a lot of really wonderful experiences, and that's fantastic. But there's also a lot of us who aren't treated very well. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was this, I think I can do this better, or at least I think I can do it better on my own. When I started to grow, it was a place of I had a wait list of 20 to 30 people waiting to come see me, and this harsh realization of there's no way I can see all these people. And
Yeah.
so I can either refer them to people I know and trust and figure out who those people are, or I can send them out into the wild and hope they happen to land in good hands. And I really wanted to make sure that if somebody couldn't see me, that they could see somebody that I know was going to provide really quality services to them. And so that's kind of how I ended up expanding.
All right, that's great. So now I know like your business journey, like how you go into this trade, and also like now you help with people with a mental health condition, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's narcissism is one of them, I guess, is like not
Yes.
many people talk about and not use the word often. So
Mhm.
if you can explain to with your terminology as well, like yeah, I know like you're a therapist as well. So if you can explain to us, like a simple wording, simple sentence that so everyone can understand, that would be great. And then I'll have some follow-up question with that.
So narcissism, on a very general level, is being overly self-centered, um, overly entitled, functioning in the world with very grandiose ideas about the importance of ourselves. For for me, for a lot of the people that end up in my therapy room are actually not narcissists because right in their context, the way that their brain functions and works, they are not the problem. It's somebody else or something else outside of them that if something or someone else changed, then everything in their world would be better.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, if somebody that has narcissism ends up in my therapy office, it's either because they've been drugged in by a significant other or because they've been mandated.
Mm.
So a lot of the times, what the people I'm working with are actually people in or coming out of relationships with someone who may have narcissism or another personality disorder.
Okay. So yeah, and of course, it's like I think it's happening more and more often last few years because of the social medias and everything is growing. People are like trying for like attention. Like, "Hey, if you're not watching me, then I'm gonna kill myself," right? Like a kind of thing. People
Sure.
are committing suicides and everything. I've seen so many stats and things like that. And people are doing so many crazy things because they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be like
Yeah.
one noticed. And that's why they're doing crazy stuff. They wouldn't have any kind of self-respect. That way is to do things, they're coming out of their comfort zone
Sure.
and taking it the next level. That's why people get into like pornography. People are going like
Sure.
explicit movies and things like that.
Hmm.
Especially happening in third world country nowadays. I would say more than like first world countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh,
Sure.
and people are just
Hmm.
coming out of it like a TikTok. But TikTok, like I had
Sure.
to stop going through like the algorithm needed to be changed. I was like, what am I seeing these? Because I don't want the kind of content to be
Sure.
consumed, like a naked woman, like a continuously,
Yeah.
because that triggers as a man, like this is a problem. And people
Sure.
are doing that because of they're gonna get 100,000 followers, they're gonna be influencer. I'm
Sure.
100% sure, like if you have any great content, you're gonna impact someone's life, go for it.
Hmm.
Like whoever you are, like you're gonna bring someone's value, but you're not bringing anyone's value. Like you are just
Yeah.
taking yourself for the attention, and for the
Hmm.
attention, now those people,
Hmm.
some of them getting viral, some of them are not getting viral. So
Yeah.
those people are not getting viral, they get super depressed. Am I not pretty? Am I not good enough?
Yeah.
Then they doing overstep. Like probably I need to change the way I
Sure.
look, the way
Hmm.
am I
Hmm.
a woman? I need to be a man. I'm
Hmm.
a man. I need to be a woman.
Hmm.
There's so many things is going on because of like attention we're seeking. So,
Sure.
do you think like it's a blame to like the social media platforms right now for the way we are changing?
I think a lot of it has to do with so I want to be clear, like everybody who you can be attention seeking and not be narcissistic.
Yeah.
And narcissism lives on a spectrum, right? So all of us can have traits of narcissism, just like all of us can have traits of openness or agreeableness or extroversion. It lives in that same realm in terms of everybody can have these traits. And just because we might be attention seeking or posting outrageous stuff on social media for attention does not necessarily mean that we are narcissistic.
Yeah.
However, bearing in mind that in the way certain countries or systems or societies are set up, it can lead, it can foster more, how do I word this? It leans in towards people who have narcissism, right? Like people, like if we look at America, right?
Yeah.
America is very much like you watch out for yourself, you do what you can to get to the top. People who are cutthroat they make it to like CFOs and big ticket titles, right? Because they're
Mm.
not afraid to step on the people before them because it's what's best for me. And that is supportive of someone who has these narcissistic tendencies. They are likely to do really well in systems like that because that's the type of personality that needs to do well in those types of systems. So when we're looking at these types of variables, we have to also look at what is the system around them. And which is also why it can be very confusing for people in relationships with someone to say, wow, like they're really great at their job. Like they're fantastic. Everyone loves them. They're so
Mm.
charismatic. They get to the top, they get what needs to be done and they do it. But why can I not connect with them at home? Why do they not show up at home? Why don't they ever think about me? What about my needs? Right?
Yeah.
There can be this huge disconnect because that trait of narcissism serves them really well in one place where that system's set up to really boost a person like that. But in another setting, that same trait can actually cause a lot of damage and destruction.
Yeah, that's so true. We just said, and there is another problem is that like we don't know, we don't realize like we are going through the process, right? So oftentimes probably like someone else like thinking like this person is a narcissist and they say things and they do something, but we don't see that as a problem, and that's why we don't work on ourselves because we don't know like what we're doing.
Sure.
We think it's just a normal. But how
Mhm.
do someone can identify? Let's say someone is our listeners and they have that kind of problem and they don't know like what kind of symptoms or like that way they
Mhm.
can identify like I'm a
Mhm.
narcissist. Do you have like any kind of what do you call it? Sometimes test you go through and it works out. Is there something like that, or like you have to ask yourself a question?
I wish there was some kind of assessment in the grand scheme of the mental health world. I mean, mental health is really, when we look at medical practices in general, right, like doctors and
Yeah.
nurses, the mental health world is relatively new. I mean, on a whole. But then when we narrow it down to personality disorders like narcissism, we really know it's in its infancy. We are really just now starting to really get a better grasp on what is it and how does it show up. We had originally really thought about personality disorders as these extreme variables like serial killers and sociopaths. And while those people exist, there's also these like subtler forms of personality disorders that can be destructive to relationships and society, depending again on where you fall in that spectrum. So there is not an assessment at this time to really assess for personality disorder. Take this checklist and you'll know if you have it. I think one of the biggest barriers that one of the biggest telltale signs is that for a lot of people with especially high levels of narcissism or even other personality disorders, they lack the self-insight and the self-awareness to even look inside and go, yeah, it could potentially be me.
Right.
If you're watching this and you're thinking, maybe it's me, maybe I have these challenges, my first suggestion would be find a therapist equipped and knowledgeable on personality disorders to explore that with. It can be a big task to do on your own, right? Because if that's it's a double-edged sword, right? Somebody with a personality disorder lacks the self-insight to be able to do that. And so pairing up with somebody that can help you walk through that process, I think is going to be your biggest tool.
Okay, so let's say someone goes to the therapist and they need the help. So let's say you as a therapist, like someone comes in, they just realize like, yeah, I'm a narcissist. I need to work on myself. I need to find what I can do or improve. So how would you help someone? Like, is there any formula you use or steps? Like, I don't want the whole process. It's just like a give overview.
Yeah. Personality disorders are basically that there's a dominant trait and that trait takes over. So for narcissism, we're looking at like grandiosity, right? And self-centeredness, right? That's the primary trait. I'm the best thing in the world. That's it, right? And that's the trait that we move through life with. The missing trait is the ability to be self-reflective or to be maybe a bit humble. And so really when we're looking at personality, what we're going to try and do in that room is try to teach that missing trait. How do we practice reflecting inward? How do we practice taking accountability? How do we practice acknowledging our role in a problem at hand? All right. And basically trying to build in this missing trait rather than trying to, like, say with like depression or something, take away a symptom that's going on.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think like it's a long process to get out of kind of mentality, or like this is not like a long process?
Definitely a long process. If you have a personality disorder, you have a personality disorder and you have it forever. This isn't like depression or anxiety where you have a depressive episode and it's there, but then it will, with tools and time and work, it will fade away and you will live without it at the same time. Personality disorders are pervasive. You have it, you have it. It's more similar to, say, autism. If you have autism, you're going to always have autism. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't learn tools to make life more meaningful or help relationships or build empathy or all of those things. You can certainly do that. But if you have it, you will always have it. And so it will be a lifelong lesson of learning and practicing different tools and skills to be able to have healthier, more meaningful relationships.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, Alexander, nearly coming to the end of the show. So before we finish off, I'd love to know like what would be like your number one advice for someone is going through like a mental health issues problem, probably their anxiety, narcissism, personality disorder, like whatever could be, like they feel like life is finished or like I cannot get cured or like things never gonna get better. What would be your advice for them?
Everything in life, the only guarantee in life actually is that nothing stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
Everything changes. And so while we may feel this way now, this feeling will not stay forever. And your best tool is to invest time and energy and resources in you and getting connected to somebody that can help you along that journey to keep you reminded of what's to come and help you navigate that, give you tips and tricks along the way. And that might be a mental health counselor, a therapist. It might be a life coach. It might be someone in your religious faith, right, that you can lean into. Whatever it is for you, find the tools and the resources to help you so you don't have to do this alone, because you certainly, life is hard. You don't have to do this alone. There are people out there ready and willing to help guide you through whatever your challenges are.
Yeah, thank you so much for there is always a hope and there is always a chance we can bear. So
Yes.
thank you so much for that, Alexandra. So before we leave, like if anyone wants to learn more about yourself, your business,
Mhm.
where's the best place to find you?
Check out themadbeyond.com. You can learn more about me, my different e-courses, one on narcissism in families, as well as get connected to therapy resources if you want to learn more about the MAD therapy.
Thank you so much for sharing those. So I wish you best of luck with your business, your personal life, and you have a wonderful year ahead. And thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you, guys. This is a wrap. So I wish you enjoyed a conversation with Alexandra Walsh today. I hope you're going to take some insight and work on yourself. If you need help, you can reach out to her on her website, or you can reach out to her on social media platforms. So until then, I'll talk to you in the next episode. Take care.